guys, it's Olivia and welcome back to Live in Literature. Thank you so much for all the love and support I received in my last video, and if you have not seen it yet, feel free to head over to our channel to check it out. Well guys, the time has finally come. Drum roll please, aren't we all so excited? I'm so excited, I don't even know how to contain myself. It is finally time to talk about every book reader's favorite time of the year, autumn.
It's autumn?
Autumn is upon us, people. Okay, at least it is in my book. We've reached September. Hello, happy September, everyone. Happy birthday month to me. It is my birthday month. My birthday is later this month. September is the start of autumn, in my opinion, and it is the start of fall book recommendations, guys, okay? I know what you little sluts and you little whores have been waiting for. You've been waiting for your little fall book recommendations. Well, I am here to bring them to you today. And boy, do I have the biggest list of all time. I have about like 8, 9, 10 recommendations for you today for fall fantasy book recommendations. Now, a quick disclaimer, okay? I want to give a quick disclaimer. I will be doing fall related content for the next about like 2-ish months, 3-ish months, from like now until November, okay? So I have to space out my fall videos because we can't get all the fall content immediately, but I am also, there's just so much good stuff that I want to talk about with you guys that I'm like so excited to read this fall. Not only that, but also to talk about with the books that have already come out this year and past years for the fall.
I am bursting with excitement.
So my fall TBR list is already absolutely massive. It is completely destroyed. My TBR list that I had going on at the beginning of the year is completely ruined. It's been filled with at least a dozen new fall reads that I want to read exactly during this time of the year when it starts to get a little colder. The fireplace is going, everyone's cozying up with their books. But full disclosure, I tried to stay away from certain topics. For instance, I want to do a whole separate video for cozy fall reads or cozy fall fantasy reads. I want to do a whole separate one for that because recently I've been kind of getting into my cozy fall reads and it's been really, really lovely. And so I want to do a whole separate video on those types of fall books to recommend and cozy fantasy that I want to recommend. And I want to stay away from, I tried to stay as much away from as I could of dark academia as much as I could because I want to do a whole separate video for dark academia. And unfortunately, to everyone's very large disappointment, I bet, I'm trying to stay away from vampires. I know, shocking, I know.
I just want to sink my thing. Yeah.
I am reading I'm going to be reading a bunch of vampire novels this fall season. I want to wait until it's proper October to get into like the spooky monsters and magic and vampire vibe. So I am trying to stay away from vampires, but these books that I'm here to recommend to you today are true fall fantasy, okay? These are fantasy books that have the atmosphere, the tension, the vibes, the spookiness, the ghostiness, the like whimsy of fall, the romanticisms of fall. It very much embodies the fall vibes. And these books that I'm here to recommend to you today are books that I believe have the best fall vibes and fall energy, and books that personally for me that I have read in the fall and do think you should read this fall. These are all books that are going to be high star ratings. I'm talking nowhere less than a 4.5. I'm talking these are 4s, 4.5s, and 5s, okay? And I'm also, because I have so many recommendations, I am going to be going a little bit quick today with talking about the summaries and things like that. And quick before I get started, if you guys have any fall books related videos that you would like to see this fall, please feel free to leave them down below in the comments. Also, don't forget to keep subscribing to the channel because we are so close to 800 subscribers and we will be doing a giveaway for 800. Woo woo! But without further ado, let's get into my fall fantasy book recommendations. Let's get started. The first recommendation that I have for you guys today is one of my all-time favorites and one author that I will never stop recommending for atmospheric fall reads is Hannah Witton's For the Wolf. I've talked about For the Wolf many times on this channel, but this book really takes the cake when it comes to atmospheric fall vibes. And not only that, but a very like compelling story. We have a young woman named Red. Well, her nickname is Red. She has a full name, but Red. Anyways, this is very much a play on Little Red Riding Hood, but essentially Red, or Rhaenyra, is a young woman who lives in this kingdom. She's the second-born daughter in this kingdom, and the second-born daughters of this kingdom of every generation essentially are sacrificed to the wolf in the wilder wood. And so the second daughters are forced to go into the wildwood to basically like pay the wolf the fee of their bodies, and essentially so that the wolves will let the old gods go. So Red is forced to go into the wilder wood to sacrifice herself to the wolf, but she finds out that the wolf is not an actual wolf but a man, and that the wilder woods have a greater power than anyone has even come to know, that they have to, essentially she and the wolf have to like stop. This book is tension, it is lustful, it is atmospheric, it is spooky forest vibes, it is a Little Red Riding Hood retelling, which to me screams atmospheric fall vibes. This is one of my favorite fantasy like duologies. This is a 2-book series. The second one is called For the Throne. It is absolutely fabulous. I cannot recommend this one enough. If you are looking for atmospheric, romantic, like tension, and also like a great story with amazing storytelling, this book is for you. Absolutely. I think this book was a total 5-star in my book. I absolutely love this one. 5 stars to Hannah Witten's For the Wolf. Next, moving on to one that is no surprise to anyone in the book talk community. And when I say that when I read this book the first time, which I've talked about this before on the channel, when I read this book the first time, I started it in like the spring and I didn't like it. I like started it and I was like, I'm bored. And then later on last year when I read it in like October, oh my gosh, it like, for some reason, the season and like the time that I was reading it in my life completely changed everything. You have to read One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig. Guys, this is the atmospheric fall read of the year, of the century, of forever. This book came out last year and it is also a duology. The second one is Two Twisted Crowns. But essentially, this book has one of the most insane magic systems of all time. And of course, again, one of the most like spooky and haunting like forests and like magical like goings on that just give all of the fall realness. This book is about a young woman named Elspeth who lives in a kingdom where there is a curse upon the land. There is a magic deck of cards that have been scattered across the kingdom, and people own these cards. And if you have a card, you can possess the power of that card, but you also receive its consequences. When Elspeth is very young, she touches the card called the Nightmare, and the Nightmare, a creature, a demon, is living inside of her mind, talking to her, speaking to her throughout all of this. She ends up helping one of a rogue highwayman essentially to reunite the deck so they can break this curse from the evil king that owns all of these, like as they're starting to collect all of the other cards. This book is everything to me. This is one of the most enchanting, wonderful, new adult, very grown up, like special books I have ever read. I absolutely adore this book. I think this was in my top 5 best books that I read last year. I still cannot recommend it enough. It is one of the most atmospheric, delicious, absolutely beautiful books. I cannot wait to see what Rachel Gillig puts out next. I know she's already announced for her next book in 2025, and I'm so excited. But again, if you are looking for true fall vibes, you will look no further than One Dark Window.
There's just something about autumn that resonates with me as a person.
Right, you like it. But for me, it's something more.
The next one is a darling, but also, again, very atmospheric fall fantasy. We have Where the Dark Stands Still. Where the Dark Stands Still is a Polish-inspired fantasy novel about a young woman named Liska who essentially runs away into this like famous woodland in her town. She runs away because she does not want to like face the responsibilities of her hometown. She does not want to get married. She wants to run away into the woods because she has dark magic. And when she runs away, she essentially finds this mansion, this like forest mansion in these woods, that there is a demon of the forest who controls it. His name is the Leslie. And he essentially like is the demon ruler over this forest. She strikes a bargain with him that she will be his servant and like work in his mansion for free as long as he can help her like break her magic that's inside of herself. Or is he going to help her repair it? This book is charming. It is absolutely lovely. I think I ended up crying when I read this one too for some reason.
Why am I crying over this book? It's not. Where the Dark Stands Still. It's literally just like, I don't know. I can't explain myself right now.
This one meant a lot to me. It is definitely a YA book for sure, but it's still, again, it has all of those like creepy, haunting forest vibes. It has like weird crotchety, like scary creatures, but are also friendly creatures that like become friends. This book is very atmospheric, very poetic, very beautiful to read. It's really fun to read. I really enjoyed this one. It's a quick read, and it's a great like standalone novel if you're just looking for something fun and foresty to read. I think I gave this one 4 stars or 4.5 when I read it. I really enjoyed it. It is such a great book. Very, very atmospheric and very, very fun. So this one, Polish fantasy, if you're looking for one. The next one that I have to recommend is a contemporary fantasy, okay? Contemporary fantasy, all right? This is a modern day urban fantasy, all right, people? And I don't recommend them often because I don't like them. We have Alex E. Harrow's Starling House. I've recommended this one time and time again as a very special book. This one holds a very special place in my heart. It came at a very unexpected time in my life when I read it, and I also just feel like it has the true Gothic fall vibes and a little bit of like a horror vibe as well. This one has to do with a haunted house or like a scary house, a spooky house, and I think people love a haunted house kind of book. The house is alive! This book is about a young woman named Opal. She's like in her mid to late 20s. She's a high school dropout. She's an orphan. She and her like adopted or her like stepbrother live in like a motel in this little city in Kansas. There is a haunted house essentially, or a house that is in this town that everyone stays away from because people have died there. It's a very creepy house. One day Opal has always felt called to this house. She always felt like it has a connection to her. And one day she goes up to this house and a man opens the door and he essentially like offers her a job to come and like work for him because she's like needing a better job and like out of work and she wants to make money for her brother. And as she starts to hang around this house and this man, she starts to discover that there are a lot more goings on than people are giving credit for, and there's a reason why it's so haunted and why this man is also so haunted. There is a romance aspect, which of course you know I love. This is a great urban fantasy. Like, I don't find these very often. It's also just like, it's mostly urban versus fantasy. It's more of that. The ending is really where it starts to take like that fantasy turn. But I still really like this one for the Gothic vibes, for like the horror aspect, for the spookiness, and for the like, I don't know. I just felt like it was a very grown-up story. It felt very like, it was a very grown-up story. I felt very like grown up reading it. I don't know. I felt like I could like relate to some of the aspects that Opal was going through. And I also just really enjoyed her character. I enjoyed her candor and her like roughness. She's very rough around the edges and I really liked that. And I just think the book is fabulous. It's so well written. I, from now on, will read anything that Alex E. Harrow puts out, like, because I really liked this one. This is definitely more of like monster house, haunted house, like a haunted mansion vibes.
The haunting is subtle, yet really, really boring. Can I go home now?
She'll hear you.
So I hope that you guys will give this one a chance. It's really, really fun, and I really, really enjoyed it. And again, very Gothic, very spooky. Really loved it. Okay, I think I'm finally ready to talk about it. Guys, I finally just finished, and I cannot recommend this book enough. When I say that this book has completely altered my brain chemistry, I am not kidding, okay? I am absolutely 1000% not kidding. I am talking about Ava Reid's Lady Macbeth. Guys, Lady McFreaking-Beth. I know that I feel like every other video these days, I've been recommending stuff that has to do with Shakespeare or with the theater. Sorry, again, theater kid, but
I will be in the theater until noon for those of you bold enough to extend the wingspan of your creative spirit.
guys, Lady Macbeth, this was such a provocative historical fantasy. One of the most interesting books that I have ever read. Ava Reid is a really interesting author for me because I feel like all of her books could fall in a fall recommendation, okay? Anything that she writes has this very like haunting, spooky, Gothic horror to it. I didn't even know where to categorize this book when I was trying to like rate it. I was like, where do I put it? Do I put it in fantasy? Do I put it in historical? Do I put it in horror novel? Like, I didn't even know what I was reading half the time. The book is mesmerizing. It is so smart. It is so smartly written. It's when I read books like this that sometimes I think like maybe I could write a book, you know? And someday maybe I will. But like I read books like this and I'm like, oh my gosh, these authors are so brilliant. Like absolutely brilliant. Like brilliant in the point that it irritates me because I'm like, how can you be so smart? Like this is genius. Like the genius writing in here.
You're a genius. No. I'm only average intelligence.
Like there's some really like amazing historical stuff going on in this book that I just like loved. Essentially, if you're not familiar with the story of Macbeth, Lady Macbeth is about Lady Macbeth. It's about a young woman named Rossille. She's 17 years old, being married off to a Scottish brute named Lord Macbeth, or, you know, Macbeth. Anyways, she's being married off to this Scottish brute, and she will do anything in her power to, like, prevent this man from, like, destroying her. And as she continues to live with this, like, monster, she's trying to essentially like, control the narrative. But as she is trying to control the narrative, things like don't go her way, some things do, and she's like essentially trying to like come into her power and like essentially like find herself like as a young woman. Now this is very different from the McBeth and the Lady Macbeth that I know from the Shakespeare production. Lady Macbeth has always been a like, they're almost like a villain and villainess duo, Macbeth and Lady Macbeth. They're like, Macbeth relies on Lady Macbeth more than any other character. I feel like in his book, she's the only person he can trust, it seems like, in the Shakespeare play, because she is this like force to be reckoned with who is like sold her soul to the devil, and she's this demon woman. But in this version, it's almost like you're seeing the historical aspects of like, what would it have been like to have been a young bride of not royalty, but like essentially of noble blood, being married to another man of noble blood, 3 decades your senior, and you're 17 years old. And what was it like for a young woman in this time trying to like come into herself, but also to like harness the power that she has within her. This book was sick. It's so sick. There are so many quotes in it. I've highlighted things like, there's some sick quotes in here that made me want to vomit. Like, I just was like, my gosh, this book makes me ill to read.
I can't believe that there are people that would do something like this. I just want to cry right now. It's so sick and twisted.
It's disgusting, and it's amazing, and it's so gritty and haunting. This book has elements that are just like disgusting to read, and I ate up every second of it. I loved it. I could go on and on and on about how much I loved Lady Macbeth. No, I know I've been seeing some discourse online of why some people didn't like it. For me, the book, I really enjoyed it. I felt like, I will say my one caveat is I felt like the ending was a little bit too quick. It wrapped up just a little bit too quick, and I would have liked her to like really like pace the ending a little bit longer. The book definitely could have used it. It's not that long of a book, you know? So I would have liked that a little bit more, but regardless, I still really loved the messaging, and I still really loved the book. It left me shaken to my core. It left me like just staring at a wall for like 30 minutes afterwards. Like, it left me reeling, and I still really enjoyed it. This will probably be in like my best reads of the year. I freaking enjoyed it, guys. This one's definitely going in like the most haunting gothic fantasy historical fictions I've ever read. You have got to read this book. The next book that I want to recommend is one of my absolute most favorite books of all time. I absolutely love this book. It is literally like one of my most favorite things ever. It is Little Thieves by Margaret Owen. Okay, Little Thieves, guys. I've recommended this one before. This is technically a YA, but I honestly think the writing is so good that like literally anyone could read it and enjoy it. It's one of my favorites. This is a Goose Girl retelling, if you're familiar with that old story. Essentially, the story goes is it's about a young girl named Vanya, who is the daughter of the goddess Death and the goddess of Fortune. And essentially, she's their daughter, and she owes them a great debt. And to essentially pay their debt back, she essentially steals the life of the I think she's a duchess, or like she's like a princess. She's the servant to a princess named Giselle, and Vanya steals Giselle's life by stealing these magic pearls that make her look like Giselle, and she leaves Giselle a penniless nobody out to stranded for her life. And Vanya becomes a beautiful princess like overnight. She becomes this beautiful girl, and she essentially becomes this like wonderful royalty, but she's also a jewel thief by night. Essentially, though, on one of her escapades where she is being a jewel thief, she crosses the wrong god, and the god curses her for her greed and to start turning into jewels. And she's got 2 weeks to figure out how to break her curse without her whole body turning into jewels. It's a really interesting retelling. This is, again, like a lot of really cool like mythology that we got going on here. This is a great story. Like, I feel like this is the perfect example of like a perfect fall book where it's like spooky and kooky, and it's got like a crazy cast of characters, and there's like an amazing like resolve at the very end. And I will say, like, I just think like the dedication alone of this book, I love it. Like, the dedication of this book alone gives me all the fall vibes, and I'll read it to you guys. It says, "To the Gremlin Girls, I would like to tell you something inspiring, but the truth is, when life closes the door for us, it doesn't always open a window. The good news is, that's what bricks are for." I just love it. I just feel like it is so like charming and whimsical, and I feel like the concept is so brilliantly written, and it's also so romantic as well. There's like a very cute romance that goes on throughout this book. Again, I thoroughly enjoyed this one. This one is all about like accepting who you are, and like it's very much of like facing yourself and facing your demons, and like just accepting the fact that like she just is such a gritty, Vanya is such like a gritty, honest, like catty, mean, but wonderful person. I just like love her. I love her so much. And she's amazing. I love how like reckless she is. And I just feel like this is such a fun fall whimsical fantasy that everyone should read. So this is such a great book. I highly recommend Little Thieves. And the last but certainly not least, one of my all-time favorite fantasy duologies by one of my all-time favorite fantasy duology authors, we have Miss Rebecca Ross's A River Enchanted. Guys, I've talked about A River Enchanted before. I will continue to talk about A River Enchanted. This is a new adult, very true, like Scottish folk fantasy, okay? It's so beautiful. Essentially, this book is about a young man named Jack Tamerlane who is a bard who went across, he left his home island to go to university far, far away, but he sent a letter asking for help because he's a bard. And bards essentially have special powers on this island that he came from called Cadence. Essentially, he's summoned back home to this island that he like left on bad terms. He has to team up with his rival and nemesis named Adira. She is like the princess of this island, of these two rival clans that live on this island, who both like have different like sufferings going on within their different clans. There are girls from the clan that she's a part of that are going missing, and she summons Jack back to come and help her find these girls and to bring them back home, and who's taking them. And then there's like an all-out war going on between the two clans that live on this island. This one is very much like Scottish folksy whimsy. This one leans into the folksiness. It leans into like the fae and the fae folk and like the little fairies and like the little spirits and like the kitchen sprites and things like that. This one very much leans into those cozy little things, but it's also like a very gripping and powerful story that I just like absolutely love. There are 4 POVs in this book, which I feel like is really hard to do. And I feel like Rebecca Ross does an incredible job of capturing it. There are essentially 2 couples that are the main focus of both of the 2 POVs, essentially, but there's 4, so there's like, you know, whatever, you get it. Anyways, and I feel like it's really challenging to do multiple POVs this well in a book, and I feel like she nails it perfectly. It's absolutely enchanting. It's so interesting. The concept is brilliant. I just think Rebecca Ross's writing is so, so good, and she writes some of the best and most like soul-shattering, like it feels like a historical fantasy, but it's not historical. So like, I would say just like fantasy that's like fall vibed. I just absolutely love this book. I cannot recommend it enough. A River Enchanted is literally one of my most favorite books I've ever read. I absolutely adore it, and you guys will adore it too if you give it a chance. So that is all the books that I have to recommend for you guys today. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. And if you did, do not forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the Live in Literature YouTube channel. Again, guys, I hope that you enjoyed all of the fall fantasy book recommendations. I will be probably doing a part 2 to this series because I kid you not, I have so many more recommendations to even give you for fall fantasy books. I'm absolutely loving this time of the year. It is literally so fun. If you guys have any recommendations or book videos that you would like to see this fall, please feel free to leave them down below in the comments. And again, so sorry about the glitch in the system for last week's video. Don't know what happened with that. I'm going to make sure that doesn't happen again this week. But regardless, love you guys so much, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye!